it's a timeless story, and I think that's why it's always worked as a franchise in many ways. There's something kind of wonderful about the what-if scenario that another species on this planet were to become the alphas of our planet, and I feel that has really stood the test of time in the same way that, you know, the Trials of Hercules is still as relevant now or appealing to a modern audience as it was in terms of the mythology of that period. So what we've tried to do that is so very different from the other films in the franchise is tell the story set in the here and now. It's a contemporary story. It deals with real world science, and there is a certain amount of heightened reality in terms of we're dealing with an illness that has yet, unfortunately, to find a cure. But we're taking that idea of something that is created for the good of mankind actually has potentially the reverse effect.
This has the potential to change lives.
Some things aren't meant to be changed.
You know, we're dealing with real apes, we're dealing with real gorillas, orangutans, chimpanzees, and so to tell that story about real apes again is so different from the other films in the franchise, the other aspects of the mythology. And frankly, we've never had the technology to achieve that, and we never could have used live apes, and we never would have wanted to use live apes, I think. It would have been a real cruel irony to tell the story of the oppressed and use them and exploit them. So I'm really pleased that we had the opportunity, which 2-3 years ago we probably couldn't have pulled this off. And so it's a real first in terms of cinema, being able to tell the story, a narrative-driven, character-driven story about a whole other species, and have human actors perform those roles.
The most important thing is that really whenever you receive a script, whenever you get a script, you read it and you think, do I want to do this story or not? And the whole of the technology that will then enable you to shoot that movie or play that part is kind of secondary to anything. So if it's a live action movie or a movie that involves performance capture, you don't think, oh, I'll take on a role or because it's shot in this particular way, or it's a 3D movie or that, and people do think for some weird reason that performance capture is a genre, and it's a tool at the end of the day, and that's a really, really important thing to remember. I mean, probably the reason that Rupert got involved, and certainly the reason I got involved, was the power of the written word and the power of the script, and it was an amazing origin story and a beautifully crafted and written character. Caesar goes on this incredible journey from being this innocent who basically becomes a revolutionary leader, and it's a vastly different character to that of Kong, say, who is very much an isolated, lonely survivor past his prime, who's going to die nearly every day, and who actually connects with a human being. This is about. In terms of playing the role, it's a journey from an innocence and a sense of feeling loved and nurtured and brought up with people that love him, almost like a child that is given a great start in life, and then suddenly reaching a point where he becomes self-aware and realizes that in fact he's some kind of freak, and that he then through no fault of his own, but no real fault of his own, is then incarcerated and thrown into what in effect is a hardcore prison, and then has to deal with whether he is part of the tribe that are in the prison, or whether he's or how much to reject the humanity that he's grown up with. So it's a very complex psychologically and emotionally kind of complex role, and so we, between us, the challenge was really to craft that story and be very specific at each individual moment of the journey of that character, so that it never felt so Caesar never felt over kind of anthropomorphized, but that he had to have this kind of extra intelligence.
Our whole kind of MO going into making this film and telling this story was to sort of chart Caesar's evolution, and as a character, but also as a species, as a representative of a species that has deviated from, what he initially is, which is a classic archetypal chimpanzee, into something that is more evolved. And to have the opportunity to do that within a short space of time, within just a finite number of years, is really exciting from a storytelling point of view, because then you've got the opportunity to see how he evolves, to see in the same way that we as a species have evolved through the discovery of the wheel or fire, or all of the things that have kind of sort of propelled our civilization forward. We tried to do that when we were talking. We tried to think, okay, what are the specific moments where we see how Caesar grows more intelligent, how he grows more cognizant of the world around him. But at the same time, early on in the first act of the film, he remains an innocent. He's John Merrick in The Elephant Man or something like that. He's Frankenstein, basically. And really the key for that was in the eyes, as far as I was concerned. And you know, working with somebody like Andy, when you have the opportunity to work with somebody who is incredibly expressive as a performer, and you know how that can then translate into the entity that is Caesar, into this simian entity. That's the way in, that's the kind of portal into something that is ultimately computer generated but needs to have a soul. It was no coincidence that the first image that was put out that represented this movie was a very, very standard locked off single frame shot of Andy's performance with the swivel of the eye. And we didn't, you know, that came from Weta. That was a very random, you know, we didn't even know. They came to LA, Joe Leteri from Weta flew to LA with a surprise for us. And this was 4 months into post, and he said, I've got a surprise for you. And we were expecting our first ape shot, I think 6 weeks later. And he projected it for us, and everybody just watched it on loop over and over again. We couldn't get over it. So.
I mean, Weta are, without question, kind of the world leaders in terms of, as a team who not only understands technically and how to create a digital eye and you know, how it opens up and the pupil dilates and how moisture affects it and light refracts off it. What they're brilliant at doing is interpreting actors' performance. So they're very loyal and very true. You know, they remain very true to the storytelling. They know that drama is king in the world of visual effects. You know, and they're not about showing off. They're about really serving the moment.
And it was a great lesson for me, for somebody who coming to performance capture for the first time and really having to understand it, or at least get a handle. You know, working with Andy, obviously I went 0 to 60 in about 7 days, but but Joe said something that was really great to hear, which is he said, just make sure that you get the performance. Don't think for a second that we can create that performance. If you don't get it, you know, you haven't got it, and that's, you know, that's the mark of a creative mind as well as a technician. You know.
I talk to actors who haven't done it before, and they think because it's performance capture, I might have to over-animate or kind of pull my face around a bit more, or you know, get through this technology. But actually, the reverse is true. You have to play it as if it were a live-action, big close-up. You know, performance.
When we get into the edit, what Andy performed on set in front of the camera is basically what we cut. And then what we cut and what we shape, we have a cut that is Andy in his motion capture suit. And that is then transferred to Weta. And that's what they work from. They don't recreate it, they don't, you know, keyframe it, they basically work from that. And if they were to deviate, then we'd be in trouble because it wouldn't cut together.